is stop thinking about the video and think more about what the business objectives that you're trying to achieve are, and then work out how video can help you achieve those. As you move down through the sales funnel, you go into that consideration and decision stage. At that stage, it's about proving that you do exactly what it says on the tin. So providing the social proof, whether that's demonstrating the experience that your team has and the capability that you have there, or something that we do a lot is client testimonial and case study videos, because it's very easy for any business to stand up there and say, look at us, aren't we fantastic? You don't put one billboard up and expect orders to come flying through. It's about having that consistent stream of content that works automatically in the background, if you like, as a sort of lead generation and demand generation tool for you.
Welcome back to Made to Grow, the podcast custom made for SME manufacturers. We're kicking off Season 2 with a deep dive into video strategy with Peter Craven, founder of Blue Sky Video Marketing, a UK-based agency that specialises in content creation for manufacturers. Video marketing isn't a new discipline, but it is one that has become more and more important as part of the marketing mix. As technology makes streaming more accessible to the masses and attention spans shorten, customers, including B2B customers, want information delivered quickly, conveniently, and in a way that holds interest. Video marketing, therefore, should be a cornerstone, not just of your customer acquisition strategy, but also across recruitment, internal comms, and customer care. We'll hear a little more about Peter's long experience in the manufacturing world and how video marketing has developed in recent years. Let's dive in. Welcome, Peter Craven, to the Made to Grow podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Rich. Nice to be along.
For the benefit of our listeners, I've worked with Peter for many years in different guises, both on both sides of the bench, if you like, in terms of as a client for several years, and now working with Peter with Blue Sky Video. So, Peter, do you want to tell us a wee bit more about yourself and the business?
So I started Blue Sky Video Marketing in June 2017, so 6.5 years ago now. Previous to that, I'd spent 20 years working in global marketing roles, the last 10 of which was with an engineering company supplying sand washing equipment for quarries and mines and recycling operations. So we're currently working with clients all across UK and Ireland, as well as in the US, in Scandinavia, and in Taiwan. Actually, we have a recent customer in Taiwan. On content for sales and marketing processes, recruitment, customer service, and internal comms. And 50 to 60% of the work we do is manufacturing businesses, and another 25 to 30% would be software businesses. And interestingly, you were one of the first of those, I think, Rich, and it's that model of software companies that have designed a product or a software that is for the manufacturing industry. And then, of course, once you've done a couple of software things, you have a bit of a portfolio and other opportunities open up. But that connection between software and manufacturing still is an important part of the work we do in both those areas.
Yeah, I know we've found that invaluable in terms of guiding our video strategy. So in terms of that, that experience that you bring whenever you interact with a manufacturer, I suppose many people have this misconception that you get a corporate promo video done and it put it on your YouTube channel and that's you done, unless of course you're interacting a lot with YouTube, TikTok, your platform of choice, and there are manufacturers using videos in different ways. So, how are you seeing manufacturers exploit videos across the business?
Starting with the sales funnel, I suppose. At different stages of the funnel, there are sort of different content requirements, if you like. So you mentioned the good old-fashioned promotional video, which back in the bad old days was camera crews arriving in trucks with gear that took days to set up, and setting up dollies to roll cameras through your figure. Very disruptive to the business and very expensive to do. Access to video content has been hugely democratized, if you like, by the advances of technology. So that promotional video is still an important part of it. It's probably just easier to get done than it was previously. Mm-hmm. But then as you move down through the sales funnel, you go into that consideration and decision stage, at that stage, it's about, proving that you do exactly what it says on the tin. So providing the social proof, whether that's, demonstrating the experience that your team has and the capability that you have there, or something that we do a lot is client testimonial and case study videos. Because it's very easy for any business to stand up there and say, look at us, aren't we fantastic? But the real social proof comes from your clients being willing to commit themselves to video to say the same thing. So that's on the sales and marketing side. I mean, increasingly in the last few years, we've been doing an awful lot of work in recruitment marketing with manufacturing companies. As the recruitment markets become more challenging, people have realized they've just got to work a little bit harder to try and attract and retain the people that they have. So that's very much about, helping people articulate the employer brand and the employee value proposition. What are you doing that's different from others in your sector that can help you attract the people you need to help the business to grow?
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, I suppose, following on from that is the growth in, it's less relevant for manufacturing business, I suppose, but the growth in hybrid working and remote working has seen a lot of people creating video content for those induction and onboarding processes. And even then, businesses that aren't doing the hybrid or the remote thing have still seen the value in that. So rather than, some of your product managers or HR team having to deliver the same PowerPoint presentation 16 times a year to a room full of new recruits, it's far better to make that sort of self-service, always available content that people can access as and when they need it. Because, anybody that's been through a typical induction process will know it's a bit of information overload, and you recall a very small percentage of what you were actually told at that induction day. So creating those video assets that allow people to access that is becoming more common as well.
It makes it more accessible, easier to digest. We've all been handed the inch thick employee handbook and sat through a presentation, and as you say, you remember half of it, and the book gathers dust.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's very disruptive to the business too, because you're relying on people in your team who are busy to stand up and do that PowerPoint presentation again that they just did 3 months ago, and they don't enjoy doing it. It's a waste of valuable people's time a lot of the time, and just making. A lot of induction processes, I think anyway, and this might grate with a few people, but are designed to tick an induction box rather than effectively induct people. And what we find is if you change the language from an induction process to an onboarding process, it sort of changes the approach, because induction sounds like a bit of a compliance thing, where you just have to tick a box, make sure health and safety stuff's done, and then you can say that person was inducted. But if you start talking about onboarding, it's like, do they really have everything that they need to have in order to be able to start doing their job effectively and start delivering value for the business as quickly as possible?
I suppose some of those recruitment assets have a lot of crossover, because like in terms of that cultural induction or onboarding, you don't have time to let everyone meet, if it's a big team, meet everyone and, get a feel for how things work around here, so the kind of stories that you're getting people to tell for the recruitment market and, for that potential future hire is also good content for the new hire, who can get a feel for what people actually, what values they hold, and how the business is sort of thinking culturally.
Yeah, and it has crossover into the sales and marketing process too, because very often during a sales process, particularly complex B2B sales, which most manufacturers are involved with, your prospect or your client will most likely have had contact with your business development manager, sales director, or somebody senior from the sales side, and potentially an owner, founder, manager. But they won't really have seen the depth that exists behind that. So having that content and making your team visible can, every sale is a risk reduction exercise. So if a prospect can look at you and think, okay, I get the story that the senior salesperson or senior manager is telling me, but I can also see that there's some depth and substance behind that, and they have this engineering team that look very credible and experienced, and they have this project delivery team and this installation team and this after sales department. So there are crossover benefits, I think, from doing the recruitment stuff that can benefit the sales process as well.
I think people don't realize when you think about that buying process, the dark funnel, as it's called, those people that are considering buying your product and, engaging with your business that you haven't heard of yet, whether you marketed to them or not, they found you and they're doing their homework on you. And I've forgotten the figure. It's probably 80% because most things are 80%, these days, but, it flipped. And, that's where manufacturers are probably catching up with that notion and that, that landscape that you can generate. So it's not just the product video or the promo video, it's telling that full story is really valuable. And there are parallels there too with the work we've done together, because we do the same thing. We've got the product piece, we've got the customer testimonials, we've got the team element, and then drilling down into more specific use cases and problem solving type content that we'll be doing this year.
Yeah, I mean, one of the key things that we always say to our customers in terms of the positioning piece and anything around that sales and marketing bit is as much about putting the wrong people off as it is about attracting the right people. Because, I mean, we've had several conversations over the years, Rich. I don't want to get inquiries from people who aren't suitable for us because I'll end up making a bad decision. Mm-hmm. As the owner or founder of a business, in the early stages when revenue is important, if you start to get inquiries from customers that aren't a good fit, and you start to do that work, very often people know very early on that it was a bad decision, and guess what? When it plays out, it turns out that was the truth. But when you're designing that content for use in sales and marketing and for in recruitment, it's important getting that culture and the values and the way we work over to your potential clients and your potential employees is a way of making sure that you might get less CVs or fewer inquiries, but they'll be the right ones.
Yeah.
And will stop you making those bad decisions that just end up sucking resource away from the jobs that you want to do, the clients you want to work with, the people you want to hire.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of, the practicalities here, there's a whole world of people out there who claim to help with video, and you can engage.
We know.
Yeah, your ad agency might help you do it. They'll offer that service. You end up finding out they're subcontracting it. There's lots of really talented people out there with all the gear, but how do you qualify a video producer to figure out, as you just said, how can you find a video producer who's going to be a good fit for what you need as a manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose at this very outset, it goes back to that earlier point where the democratization of access to video content is a bit of a double-edged sword, because while it does open the opportunity up to more businesses than had the opportunity as recently as 15, 20 years ago, it means that there are now a lot of operators in the market running around with, I have camera and lenses, will make videos. And from our perspective, whenever we started the business, that's what we were doing. I was in a sort of advantageous position, I suppose, in that I was my customer for 10 years before I started the business, and the idea for the business came from the frustrations that I had as an in-house marketer when I was buying video content from external suppliers, and I would have bought it from the full range of potential suppliers, from the freelancers right through to design agencies who offered video but usually outsourced it, through to animation companies, and through to stuff that we made ourselves, and so that experience, we sort of created the model for what we wanted to do based on that experience. And it took us a couple of years to figure out how to do that, but we launched our video as a service packages, which and there were 4 key influencers for that. And the video as a service really gives people, we want to work with people who want to embed video into their communications on an ongoing basis. And whenever we did our whole due diligence and looking at the market options that were out there, what we found were there were 4 key things in the manufacturing sector that we thought people wanted whenever they were buying video. The first one was the sectoral experience was very important. So they understood complex B2B sales and all the different information requirements throughout what can be very long sales cycles. The second one was the project delivery process, typically when you're dealing with video production companies and freelancers. And this isn't all of them, but in a lot of cases, people's experience is projects take a hell of a long time to get done, and a lot of them get stuck in endless cycles of re-edits as a result of sort of poor communication and project planning on the part of the whoever your person supplying your video with. The third part of it was video has almost in some circles become commoditized to the point where it's done very reactively, and a video, any video will do, can often be the thing that people think, and it's what's the cheapest way to get this done. And I mean, any successful media campaign, whether it's a billboard, a TV ad, a social media campaign, or a video marketing campaign, the quality of the creative that you produce is the single biggest influencing factor on whether that's going to work.
Exactly. The attrition rate for poor content, just drops off a cliff.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, people become a little bit obsessed around the data, around making sure the targeting's all right, and making sure all the retargeting audiences are being built, and a lot of that, which is all very, very important. But ultimately, if you're starting from a position of, you've got a bad piece of content that doesn't really engage people, it doesn't matter how much work you've put into targeting and retargeting and building lists and automated sequences. If it's the old tough software adage almost, which it's S01
Yeah. Rubbish in, rubbish out, Peter.
Rubbish in, rubbish out. Yeah. So, and the fourth thing that coming from the marketing background was there very rarely is a clear visibility of the return on investment whenever you're doing video work, because in most cases, for your video supplier, the video itself is the end result. They've been paid to make this asset, they've delivered that asset, and now it's up to you to go and make the most out of that asset. But as going back to what I said earlier, we've always come at it from the angle of we're marketers first and video people second. So we try and ask those questions earlier and say, what's the objective of this? And it's not likes, comments, and shares. You can't take those to Tesco's. It's what is the objective? Is it hire 10 new engineers? Is it, promote those 3 internship roles? Is it set up a new distributor in France? Is it, onboard 15 new customers?
Launch a new product or
whatever it might be. So linking the content that we're producing to a real business objective that's being reported monthly at board meetings, that allow the marketing people then to speak to the senior people in an organization using the language that they understand. Very often marketing people get caught in the marketing jargon trap and start talking about reach and engagement metrics and things. And I mean, the reality is the people sitting in the C-suite of the boardroom table, they just care about pounds and pence, So as marketers, I think we all need to be better at communicating at that senior level in the language that people at that senior level want to be communicated in, rather than trying to blind them with the scientific marketing jargon that we think makes us sound clever, but in fact doesn't resonate with people.
Well, this is it. And particularly it's a balance, because those metrics are helpful whenever you're trying to validate an experiment. You come up with an idea for a video that meets an objective, or maybe a series of videos, and then you have to put that to the test and look at the data and see what happens. And even as we did last year, a couple of different takes on ad formats, just to see what the engagement levels were like. And we went into it with our eyes open, because we didn't know if it would work or not. And some of them work better than others.
And that'll always be the case. Always be the case. Yeah. And not enough. I mean, you're one of the few customers of ours, Rich, who has, who is willing to invest in that sort of process. All too often, because of the reactive approach and because of the tight deadlines that inevitably leads to, the opportunity for testing isn't there. Because if people, a typical inquiry for us is, we've got a client case study we need to do, and they say next Thursday works. Right. Well, there's not an awful lot of opportunity to project plan and to test that. It's a very quick turn. Yeah. Whereas when we're working with people on an ongoing basis, and the knowledge of how we work and how you work in your business and your customers, that allows the space and the flexibility to say, shall we try out a few things here so that we can all learn about what works best? and try and make sure that when we do go live with a campaign to a wider audience, that we've got some data behind it that tells us that this is gonna fly and deliver the results that you need it to.
The Made to Grow podcast is brought to you by FlowLens, the simple, affordable MRP system specifically designed for SME device, equipment and machinery manufacturers. Our top-rated cloud-based software can help you cut down on wasted materials, time and money, and eliminate the chaos of running your manufacturing with spreadsheets and hope. Our customers have reported savings of over a day per week per person in their business by cutting out needless admin, duplication of work and countless mistakes. Plus, lead times are shortened by up to 75%. And after hundreds of successful implementations, we've got the blueprint for manufacturing success nailed down. Head over to flowlens.com for a quick video tour of the software and to hear from more manufacturers like you who have transformed their businesses with FlowLens. Now, back to the interview. So when you're engaging with a new customer, what are the kind of steps that you take them through, and where do they need to meet you in the middle in terms of that? There's obviously got their objectives. They've got the things they think they want to do with certain customers, but describe that journey that gets the best outcome for.
Once we've engaged with a client on the basis that we do, as I talked about earlier, about qualifying the right customers in, so we do an awful lot of work behind the scenes to look at how potential organizations in our target sectors are using video in the first instance. And once they've met certain criteria about the volume of video that they're doing, the channels that they're using, the type of customers that they have, the internal structure is an important one, because we can't do this without some support internally. So we know that there has to be an internal project owner who's going to be able to liaise with us and organize shoots and provide feedback and do all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Once we've got to the point where a client has said to us, okay, this sounds like something we want to move on with, the first stage is really that discovery workshop where me and a senior member of our production team will sit down with as many people from the client business as is relevant. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's 3 or 4. And it's a very top level conversation at that stage around what are the specific business objectives that, either opportunities you want to unlock or problems you want to solve this year. And then we ask a lot of questions, drill down into those things, and then we go away and come back and say, okay, this is how we think you could use video to help you achieve these things. I'm not ever going to say to a customer, video is the only thing you should be doing. I've said it several times now, but marketer first, video person second. It's about making sure the mix is right.
Yeah.
So these are all the potential ways you could use video to help achieve those things. This is what your budget looks like and your internal resource looks like for us to be able to determine what we could realistically do. Let's start to pick the things that you think are going to have the most impact.
Yeah.
And we put together a plan. And the important thing to note there is that the plan is reassessed every 3 months, because someone said to me once, I've never had a plan that went to plan, but you still need to have one.
Exactly.
So things move and shift and priorities change, and we understand that. So we tend to work on the idea that we have an outline idea of what we're going to do over the course of the year, but every 3 months we'll check in and make sure nothing's moved, and we establish the priorities for the next 3 months and then work with the team to go and get those things delivered and done.
Yeah. One of the things that's useful as well about your approach is that you create multiple assets out of one activity. So if you're on site with a customer doing a testimonial, you get the testimonial video, but you're also producing short form content, which is useful, whether it's just mini snippets for for LinkedIn or for use in other scenarios. So that there's an evergreen and kind of resource efficient way of thinking about the capture of this stuff. And again,
and the analogy I always use with customers whenever I'm talking about that is because everybody's familiar with the John Lewis ads at Christmas. So the first time you see that John Lewis ad, you see the 2 minute version, that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. And then, but if you notice the next time you see that, when it's on Channel 4 or UTV or wherever it might be, you'll only see a 30 to 45-second edit of it, because they don't need to pay for the 2 minute slot. They don't need to watch the whole thing again. They just need to remind you how warm and fuzzy you felt the first time.
Yeah.
So it's similar with long form case study content is a good way of providing that social proof, for example, to customers that you do exactly what it says on the tin, and here's a customer saying how the process worked.
Yeah.
Following that, reminders with 15 to 20-second sound bites that just act as a way of reinforcing that. Billboard campaigns, you don't put one billboard up and expect orders to come flying through.
Mm-hmm.
It's about having that consistent stream of content that works automatically in the background, if you like, as a sort of lead generation and demand generation tool for you.
Yeah. On the platform piece, like obviously B2B, LinkedIn is a really important platform. Sometimes you go on there and you feel like it's just saturated with unhelpful content, and then other times it's more useful.
Yeah.
I don't really need to know if somebody is all set up and ready to go for yet another trade show that I'm never going to attend, or there's certain types of content I think that
I'll stop posting those pictures.
Well, I think it's just cutting through it more and more, that being helpful, with people's time, or the time you put into being on the platform. Having said that, small plug, we're doing the Southern Manufacturing Show, and I'll have to remember not to do the same thing myself in a couple of weeks' time.
No, I think it's an interesting comment about the channels, and observing it from where we see it, I think YouTube is greatly underused by B2B businesses. I think that there can be a little bit of an obsession almost with the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok channels. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, with those sort of channels, and this can often be the thing that stops people investing in the content for those channels. It's back to the old adage, today's newspapers or tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper.
Yeah.
The content you produce today on social media is dead tomorrow a lot of the time, and that's if it makes it that far. YouTube has a greater potential for your content to really endure and provide value throughout the sales process on an ongoing basis, because it is the place where people go to when they have a problem to solve, mm-hmm. as well as watching silly videos or watching music videos. But when people have a problem, how to is one of the most common searches on YouTube every single year. So, if your customers are asking that question about your product or service or similar products or services to yours, mm-hmm. there's an opportunity to catch and engage with that audience, as well as all the additional SEO benefits that provides for your website, with those videos appearing in the search results and providing backlinks to your website and all that good stuff as well. So YouTube is vastly underused, I think, as a tool that can deliver value over a long period of time. And people do, all the research shows people do spend longer there whenever they are there. So if you can build a library of, like you said, useful content that helps people solve a problem, helps people feel a little bit smarter than they did before they watched it, mm-hmm. What all that stuff will hold people's attention, because they're in a different mindset. Social media channels is very much a scroll stopping thing. Yeah. Whereas YouTube is, people are in research mode and are therefore in a different mindset and likely to spend a little bit more time engaging with the stuff that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's a really important, fascinating point, actually, because as you said, not a lot of people realize that. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's not obvious. It's just that it's sort of the FOMO. If you're not posting stuff on LinkedIn, you don't exist. But actually, it's just a different form of Facebook. People are passing some time than posting their own stuff. They're maybe not in problem-solving mode. And
the other thing, the important thing to say for LinkedIn, which we always advise our clients to do, is I understand that people want to create content and post it on their business page, but the reality of it is, if you want engagement from it and you want to get some value from that sort of activity, and this is whether it's video or pictures or PDFs or how-to guides or whatever it is you're publishing on LinkedIn, doing it through your personal profile and asking other people in the business to do the same thing will get you far more attention and reach and engagement than the business pages, because the engagement with business pages, unless they're huge, tends to be very low, or
Yeah.
unless you run ad campaigns to try and force people to engage with it.
Yeah.
Publishing it through because it's a person-to-person platform, so people want to hear what people are doing, not what corporates are doing. Largely, the business pages exist to be able to group together people who work for a particular organization.
Yeah.
That's the main function of them, rather than as an effective marketing tool, unless you're willing to invest budget in that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's an expensive hole that you can pour lots of money down. Speaking of money and operational effectiveness, so we talked about earlier about the evergreen content that you can save people time. A lot of manufacturers have they have an after sales function,
Yes.
and they have somebody who answers the phone and emails when things go wrong and people haven't consulted their O&M manual carefully. That's probably a huge opportunity there to save time, reduce cost, but actually have a better customer experience.
Very often, it's always interesting to me when you look at the companies that score best for customer service, and it's generally the ones that get out of the way and let people serve themselves that come top of the list. And there can be a feeling in particularly in SME organizations, and something we hear quite a lot is companies saying, "Oh no, but our customers need to speak to us." And I would always be pushing back on that and saying, but if are they speaking to you because they have to or they want to? And largely it's because they have to, because there is no alternative.
Yeah.
And when you look at in those after sales and customer support teams, which very often come under pressure, and the solution is always we need more staff in the after sales or customer support team. When in fact, if you do a bit of work to look at what are this team actually doing, you will find there's an awful lot of repetition in the tasks that they are doing. They are answering the same customer queries multiple times every single day. That is actually stopping them from dealing with the people who really need help. So back to your 80-20 rule again, Rich, if you can work out what the 80% of questions that are getting asked all the time are and produce content that answers those, then that frees up the resource in your after sales and support team to go and deal with the customers for whom those questions don't solve the problem and who actually need help. And there can be a concern sometimes that by doing this you will be talking to your customers less, but in our experience, and we know other businesses operating in the engineering space, and particularly in the software for engineering space. I mean, you mentioned O&M manuals earlier. There's a particular, I met a guy I know from another company whose whole business is designed around making that O&M manual process more efficient. And interestingly, by automating the process, you actually end up having more valuable conversations with your customers because you've eliminated all the very quick fixes.
Exactly.
People can happy to self-serve if you just provided them with the assets to do that.
Yeah, I know, because people think of a conversation as a value adding. It's great we're in touch with our customers, but actually that customer's sentiment could drop because you've made them, as you said, contact you. Yeah. They've no other choice.
And this is particularly true, when we look at now. I mean, I've got, a 21-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 7-year-old in the house, and they don't want to talk to people. And when we have these people coming in to the workforce now, mid-20s, who are digital natives, to use that term, these people have never known anything else. They were born after the introduction of the iPhone and the advent of social media channels. So the idea that you actually have to go and talk to someone, why would you have to do that? Surely there's a better way to do this.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an opportunity, to get ahead of the game. And again, this all serves back into that, making your organization seem more attractive from a recruitment perspective as well, to show that you're adopting technology in a way that is making your business operate more efficiently, as well as a business owner, helping deal with the fact that hiring people is hard, and increasingly expensive.
Increasingly, the market is shrinking. As we heard from Manufacturing NI in one of their presentations last year, the 80% of the workforce is already in the workforce,
Yeah.
or sorry, 80% of the 2030 workforce is already in the workforce. The number of people entering the job market is going to fall off a cliff, or is falling off a cliff.
Yeah, I was at an event with Stephen Kelly from Manufacturing NI a couple of months ago, probably just before Christmas, for the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and Stephen said, we are saying to all our members, operate your business on the basis that you can never hire anybody ever again.
Yeah.
How do you survive? And that makes you think very, very differently.
Yeah,
about how you can approach looking at all your processes and all your systems and all how you communicate and how you hire and how you deal with customers, and rather than messing around at the edges and thinking, is there a way to change this completely to make our business stronger in the future? The advent of things like, even going back to the equipment that you'll see in manufacturing business, robotic welding pods, up until 5 or 6 years ago, they were the exception rather than the rule in SME manufacturers. But in an increasing number of organizations we speak to now, you hear, we put a robotic welder in because of the problems hiring welders, fabricators, final assembly fitters, as well as all the efficiency benefits that causes. But, this is technology to deal with a recruitment issue.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we've covered quite a lot there, Peter, because it's great to sort of illustrate how, and that that neatly kind of emphasizes that point that these assets that you create are, basically allowing you to manage time that is finite, and the amount of available time that you have and the resources you have is shrinking. Stepping back in terms of that kind of MD or sales director, marketing director who's thinking, are we doing video right, or listening to all these different opportunities that we've discussed here? Like, what's the one piece of advice you'd leave them with to kind of walk away with and chew over today?
The main bit of advice we give, it might sound a bit strange to say this, is stop thinking about the video and think more about what the business objectives that you're trying to achieve are, and then work out how video can help you achieve those. Yeah,
absolutely, Peter. That's 100%. People get the cart before the horse. So many times with so many things as well. We find that the same with technology. If you haven't figured out where you're going, any road will take you, or any MRP software or video. Just to finish up, I appreciate you joining us. It was a really good conversation. How do listeners find you if they'd like to follow up?
I spend far too much time on LinkedIn. That's, as again, going back to the previous point, I think that's where most of our customers in the B2B space are. So that's a good place to find us. Our website is blueskyvideomarketing.com, and then we obviously have a YouTube and Vimeo channel where we show all our client work. So you can they're the best places to sort of get a feel for who we are and what we're doing, and to see if there's anything we can help you with.
Cool. Okay. Well, I will put those in the show notes, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity, Rich. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Peter. Thanks to Peter for that fascinating conversation, and I hope it has highlighted some opportunities you can exploit in your business. Sometimes taking a step back from the day-to-day can help us spot ways we can improve our processes and delight customers at the same time. Next time, I'll be speaking to Simon Coward, Director of the Smart Manufacturing Data Hub, or SMDH for short. Simon and his team are on a mission to inspire UK SME manufacturers to adopt digital technology and exploit clear, reliable data to make better business decisions. At FlowLens, we're proud to have been awarded Lighthouse Project status by the SMDH, and in the next episode we'll discuss how this will allow us to transform the fortunes of 10 UK businesses. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.